My name is Marianne Calder, and the day I signed away, everything that tied my son to my future began in a quiet law office that smelled faintly of cedar and old books. The pen in my hand felt heavier than it should, as if it understood the weight of the decision better than I did. Outside the window, autumn rain tapped against the glass in a slow, steady rhythm, almost like it was urging me to hurry. My phone buzzed again on the table beside me. Lucas, his 48th call this week. I let it ring. I had run out of words days ago. Patricia Hale, my attorney, sat across from me with a calm expression that hid nothing and revealed everything at once. She slid the final document toward me and asked in a steady voice, "Are you absolutely certain?" I looked down at the signature line. My hand hovered. My breath tightened. 3 days ago my son had thrown me out of his wedding. Today he was demanding the deed to the land my family had protected for generations. I pressed the pen to the page. 3 weeks earlier, I had been standing inside a sunlit reception hall 4 hours from my home, smoothing the front of the navy dress I bought specifically for Lucas' big day. I had left before sunrise, stopping once for coffee, determined to be early and helpful. That was who I had always been in his life, the dependable one, the steady one, the mother who showed up. The hall sparkled with gold accents and white roses arranged in tall glass vases. Laughter drifted through the air. Servers carried trays of champagne, their movements practiced and effortless. I watched the bubbles rise in my glass and tried to settle the nerves that had been tapping at my chest since the moment I arrived. I spotted Lucas across the room, laughing with his groomsmen. His tie was slightly crooked the way it always got when he was excited. He looked handsome, put together, and impossibly grown. For a moment I stood there quietly, letting myself feel proud. His father, Raymond, would have been proud too. In my purse, I carried an envelope with $7,500 inside. It was everything I had saved from months of extra shifts at the clinic, nights that left my back aching and my eyes heavy, but I did it because Lucas had asked if I could help with the wedding. And what kind of mother says no? I was watching a server rearrange a tray of small cakes when I heard my name. "Mom?" Lucas stood 3 feet away, his expression tight in a way I had not seen since he was a stubborn teenager trying to prove he could live on his own terms. I lifted my glass slightly, ready to congratulate him again, ready to hug him if he let me. "The ceremony was beautiful," I began, but he cut me off. "Mom, you need to leave." The words knocked the air from my chest. For a moment I genuinely thought I misheard him. The music was loud, people were laughing, plates clinked softly. Surely this was a mistake. "What did you say, Lucas?" He shifted his weight, unable to meet my eyes. "Madeline is uncomfortable with you here. She thinks you are adding stress. It is better if you go." My fingers tightened around the champagne glass. I felt every heartbeat, every breath, every memory of raising him alone after his father died. I had not argued, not questioned, not pushed. I had simply shown up. Lucas finally looked at me. "Please do not make this harder." I set the glass down and felt the room tilt. No scene, no questions. I walked out past strangers clinking glasses and celebrating a future I had just been cut out of. By the time I reached the parking lot, the heat of June clung to my skin, and the edges of my heartbreak had already begun to harden. The drive home felt longer than the 4 hours it actually took. I kept both hands on the wheel, gripping it the way someone grips a railing in the dark. I did not turn on the radio. I did not play any of the usual podcasts that kept me company on long trips. The silence was easier than hearing anything that reminded me of joy. The sun dipped behind the hills as I drove. The sky shifted from gold to deep blue, then to black. Headlights from passing cars washed over me in brief flashes, but nothing could distract me from the ache that settled heavily in my chest. Every mile carried me farther from the wedding, yet the hurt followed like a shadow. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the porch light glowed softly, the way it always did when I left it on for myself. The house stood still against the rising night, familiar but colder somehow. This was the home Raymond and I built together, the place where Lucas took his first steps, the place where we made promises that once felt unbreakable. Inside, the air was quiet in a way that made the loneliness louder. I set my purse on the counter and stood there for a moment, listening to nothing. No welcome, no warm voice, no sign that my world had not just shifted. I made tea but never drank it. I sat at the small kitchen table and stared at the wood grain until my eyes blurred. Outside the window, the land stretched into the darkness, 38 acres of fields, oak trees, and the barn my father-in-law built by hand decades ago. This land had shaped generations of Calders. It was more than property, it was memory. It was legacy, it was home. But that night, surrounded by the quiet, I realized how fragile even home could feel when your own child had pushed you out of his life. I went to bed without changing clothes, letting exhaustion pull me under. No tears came. The pain was too deep to rise. Morning sunlight slipped across the kitchen floor when my phone began buzzing on the counter. I was outside pulling weeds along the front garden, letting the work steady my breath, when the vibration caught my attention. Dirt clung to my hands as I picked up the phone and saw the name on the screen. Lucas. For one hopeful second, I imagined he might apologize, might acknowledge what happened, might understand that a line had been crossed so deeply it tore something inside me. I wiped my hand on my jeans and answered. "Hey Mom," he said brightly, as if yesterday had been nothing more than a mix-up during a family barbecue. "Quick question, can you send me the property papers?" I straightened slowly. "Property papers?" "Yeah," he continued, "Madeline and I were talking last night, and we think the land would be perfect for a development project. Her uncle has connections and knows investors who are ready to move fast. We could split the profit. It is a smart opportunity." I looked out across the yard. Dew clung to the grass. A small breeze moved through the oak branches. For a moment, the world seemed painfully calm. Lucas spoke again. "It is just land, Mom. We can make real money from it." Just land. The words landed harder than anything he had said the day before. This was the property Raymond and I protected, the acres that had belonged to the Calder family for 3 generations. Raymond walked those fields every evening. His father built the barn. His grandfather planted the oldest oak tree near the back fence. "It is not for sale," I said quietly. "We are not selling it," Lucas replied quickly. "We are developing it. We will handle the work. You just need to send the deed. Her uncle wants to see it before Thursday." "Thursday, 3 days away." "Lucas," I began, about what happened at the wedding. "Oh right," he said, like remembering an errand he forgot. "Sorry about that. Madeline was overwhelmed. You know how brides get. Everything is fine now." Everything was fine because they wanted something, not because he understood the damage done. "Mom," he pressed, "can you send the papers today?" I stared at the land beyond my porch, a place built on sacrifice, a place now treated like a business pitch. No answer came to my lips, only a weight I could no longer ignore. Over the next 24 hours, the calls came one after another. Lucas tried every tone he knew, first cheerful, then impatient, then frustrated, then soft with guilt. Each time I let the phone ring, the silence between us grew heavier. When the calls stopped, the messages began. "You are overreacting." Then, "We are trying to help you." Then, Madeline's version arrived, polished and sweet at the surface but edged with quiet pressure. "We only want what is best for you. You should not have to manage that much land alone." Her words were coated in kindness but built to push. I sat at the kitchen table, rereading the messages while the late afternoon light faded behind the barn. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from memory. I could still hear Raymond's voice the night before he passed, the way he clung to my hand, even as his strength slipped away. "Promise me, Marianne, whatever happens, protect the land. Keep it in the family." He knew how fragile life could be. He knew how easily values could be lost when money entered the picture. He trusted me with something bigger than both of us. Now my own son was asking me to break that promise. As the evening deepened, another message arrived from Lucas. "Mom, her uncle really needs those papers. Do not make this difficult." Difficult. The word stung more than I expected. For years I had worked extra shifts, driven him to lessons, stayed awake through nights of worry, and held our little family together after Raymond died. Difficult was never a word he used then. I set the phone down and stepped outside. The fields stretched quiet and open beneath the dimming sky. Fireflies flickered at the edge of the tall grass. Every part of this land held a story, a memory, a piece of the people who came before us. I breathed in the evening air and felt something settle firmly inside me, a boundary, a line I had never drawn before. Lucas was calling it just land, but to me it was the one promise I had never failed to keep. And I would not fail it now. By the next morning, the decision inside me had hardened into something clear and steady. I woke before sunrise, made a cup of coffee I barely tasted, and stared out at the land spreading wide beyond my kitchen window. The oak trees stood tall against the pale sky, their branches reaching up like they had for decades. They had seen generations pass. They would see more after me. If Lucas could not understand what this place meant, then I needed to protect it from the choices he was willing to make. I drove into town with the envelope of old documents tucked under my arm. The streets were quiet, the shops still closed, and the first hint of morning light rested on the faded brick buildings. When I reached the office of Patricia Hale, she greeted me with a gentle nod, her expression shifting when she saw the look on my face. "You have decided something," she said. "Yes," I answered. "I want to make sure this land is protected forever. No selling. No development. No one using it as leverage or profit, not even my own family." Patricia folded her hands. "There is a way, but it is permanent, a conservation trust. Once the land is placed into it, it can never be sold or subdivided. It becomes protected land, preserved exactly as it is now." I felt a soft ache in my chest, one that held both sorrow and a strange sense of relief. Permanent sounded frightening, but it also sounded safe. "Can Lucas contest it?" I asked. "No," Patricia replied. "A properly structured trust removes it entirely from your estate. It cannot be claimed as inheritance." I exhaled slowly. Patricia pulled out a thick folder, her fingers moving with practiced certainty. "We can begin today. I will draft the documents. You will need to sign before a notary. After that, it becomes irrevocable." Irrevocable. I let the word settle. For years I had carried the weight of this land alone. Now I was choosing to give it a future beyond the grasp of anyone who saw it as dollars instead of history. "All right," I said. "Let us begin." Patricia nodded once, and just like that, the future started to shift. The stack of documents sat between us, thick enough to hold the weight of an entire history. Patricia walked me through each section, explaining every line with the patience of someone who understood how final these decisions were. I listened carefully, but my heart was already set. Every clause, every restriction, every protection made the path forward clearer. When she finally placed the last page in front of me, she offered a pen. It was heavier than any pen I had ever held, as if it carried the intention of every Calder before me. "Take your time," Patricia said softly. But I did not need time. I had spent decades carrying this land, nurturing it, protecting it. Today I was simply putting that devotion into ink. I signed my name, Marianne Calder, not once but again and again as each page required. With every signature, a door closed and another opened. With every stroke, I felt something inside me settle, like a long-held breath finally released. When it was done, Patricia gathered the documents into a clean envelope. "This will be filed with the state today. By the end of the week, the trust will be official." My phone began buzzing in my purse, the same vibration I had ignored for days. Patricia glanced at me. "You can answer if you want." I pulled the phone out and looked at the screen. "Lucas." I hesitated only for a moment before placing the call on speaker. "Mom," his voice cracked with urgency, "we really need to talk. Please do not shut me out. I am sorry, I will fix everything. Just do not do anything drastic." I looked at the sealed envelope on Patricia's desk, then at the rain streaking down the window behind her. "Lucas," I said, my voice steady and quiet, "listen carefully. I am going to say this once." "Okay," he whispered. "I am listening." "It is not yours anymore." The silence that followed was deeper than anything I had felt in years. For several seconds, Lucas did not speak. All I heard was the faint sound of his breath, uneven and stunned, as if the words had knocked the air straight out of him. Then came the disbelief. "What do you mean, not mine? Mom, you cannot be serious. That land is my inheritance." "It was never your inheritance," I said. "It was my responsibility. And now it is protected." I could hear movement on his end, the muffled voice of Madeline rising sharply behind him. "What did she do? What did your mother sign?" Luca's voice cracked. "Mom, please, do not do this. We can work something out. I did not mean to hurt you." I was stressed. Madeline was stressed. Everything happened so fast. I closed my eyes, letting the last few years settle clearly in my mind. The missed holidays, the brief phone calls, the distance that had grown inch by inch until I could barely recognize the boy I raised. The wedding had only revealed what had already been shifting. "You made your choice, Lucas," I said, "and I have made mine." He exhaled sharply. "I will contest it. I will take you to court." Patricia leaned forward slightly, her expression calm but firm. That will not change anything, she said. The trust is irrevocable. The land is no longer part of her estate. There is nothing to contest. Lucas' voice wavered. You are choosing land over your own son. No, I replied. I am choosing to honor the people who came before you, the ones who sacrificed more than you understand. You were always welcome to be part of that legacy, but you stepped away from it. A long silence followed. When he finally spoke again, his voice had collapsed into a whisper. I cannot believe you would do this to me. I felt a slow ache rise in my chest, but not regret. You did this to yourself. He began to say something else, but I ended the call and set the phone face down on the desk. For once, the quiet felt peaceful. Winter settled over the land in slow, quiet layers. Snow gathered on the fence posts, softened the shape of the barn, and wrapped the fields in stillness. Lucas attempted to fight the trust at first, sending emails through a lawyer who seemed more frustrated than confident. Each attempt dissolved into the same answer. Nothing could be changed. Nothing could be undone. By February, the calls stopped, the messages faded, the silence returned. Then spring arrived, early and gentle. The snow melted in wide silver streaks, revealing patches of new growth beneath. One morning, as I stepped onto the porch with a cup of tea, I noticed an envelope tucked against the door. My name was written across it in handwriting I knew instantly. Lucas. I carried it to the steps and sat down before opening it. 3 pages were folded inside, written in rushed, uneven lines as if he had not allowed himself to think too long before putting the words down. He wrote about the wedding, about the shame he felt looking back, about how he let someone else shape his view of me. He admitted he had been blinded by the promise of money, by the illusion of a future that looked easier than the one he had to build himself. He wrote about Madeline leaving, and how it forced him to see what had been broken long before the trust papers were signed. He said he finally understood why the land mattered, why I fought for it, why I refused to hand it over. The last lines made my breath shake. Mom, I know I cannot undo what I have done, but I want you to know that I see it now. I see you, and I am sorry. I folded the letter and held it against my chest. It was the first time in months that the numbness cracked. When April came, the land awakened as if it had been waiting for a signal only nature could hear. Wildflowers spread across the meadow in soft waves of purple and gold. The oak trees unfurled new leaves, each one a quiet reminder that life renews itself whether we are ready or not. I began inviting children from a nearby community center to spend afternoons on the property. Many of them had never walked through open fields or climbed a wooden fence or felt the cool shade beneath an old tree. They explored every corner with a kind of wonder that made the land feel new again. Their laughter carried across the property in bright streaks of sound, filling spaces that had been too quiet for too long. One girl asked me why the land looked so peaceful. I told her it was cared for, not owned, not used, cared for. Watching them run through the tall grass, I realized something Lucas had never understood. Legacy does not rest in what we pass down. It rests in what we protect, what we refuse to let be altered or diminished by convenience or greed. Standing at the edge of the meadow, I thought of Raymond, of the generations before him, of the hands that built the barn and planted the oak trees. I had kept my promise, even when it hurt, even when it cost me more than I expected. I looked across the blooming fields and felt, for the first time in months, a sense of quiet certainty. The land was safe, and so, in a way, was I. Looking back now, I understand something I could not see in the moment. Love is not proven by how much we give. It is revealed by whether what we give is valued. When someone treats your sacrifice as an obligation, when your boundaries are dismissed, when your voice is ignored, the most loving thing you can sometimes do is step back and let consequences speak. Lucas learned that lesson in a painful way. I learned one too. Protecting your own worth is not selfish. It is essential. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have protected the land or chosen a different path? I want to hear your thoughts. If this story touched you, remember to like, share, and leave a comment below. Your voice matters more than you know. And do not forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of who we are, what we carry, and what we are strong enough to protect.